Welcome to the Lead Young podcast. I'm your host, Josh, and today I'll be interviewing the man that put the dream to the ground, the visionary, the man behind the shoe that grows, Kenton Lee.
Hey Josh, it is so good to be here. Thanks for hosting this. Let's do it. I love it.
I'm so glad you could join us. And so, if you've listened to our first episode, you know a little bit about Kenton, but before we even talk about you and Lead Young, I kind of want to rewind the clock a little bit because Brent and Scott talked about your entrepreneurial mindset and that you can just bring a business plan to life. And so I want to back up about your first nonprofit and talking about the shoe that grows. And so,
Yeah. Oh, I love talking about that. It's so basically, I am 39 years old now as of today. Or I mean like right now, but when I was a younger man, um I graduated from Northwest Nazarene University in 2007. And so I'm like 22 and had felt a call to ministry, but didn't really know exactly what that looked like. But I thought, at that point, I thought maybe I could be a missionary. Like I really enjoyed compassionate ministries, and I just didn't quite think like being a pastor was quite the right track for me. And so, but I'd never really been outside the U.S. So as I thought about being a missionary, I thought before I commit to like 3 years, 5 years, whatever. Like I should probably see if I can even do this.
mhm.
So right after graduating, I traveled for about a year. I lived in Ecuador for 6 months, and then I lived in Kenya for 6 months. And I'm really glad I did that. I'm really glad I took the time to do that. It was life changing stuff, but I also realized like I could not be a missionary. Like I missed home way too much, and just have a ton of respect for anybody who can leave home and be somewhere else like to chase after their calling. And so I'm glad I did that. But one of the surprising things that came out of it was when I was living in Kenya, I got to live and volunteer at a small orphanage. And one day I was walking with all the kids, and long story short, there was a girl next to me. I looked down at her as she was walking next to me, and I was just shocked at how small her shoes were. She was wearing these shoes that were just way too small for her feet, and they were so small she had to cut open the front to let her toes stick out. And so, just that day, like right then and there, that day, I had this idea for a growing shoe. What if there was a growing shoe so that this little girl, instead of cutting the front off her shoes so her toes can stick out, and because that's the only pair she has, boy, she could just adjust it as her feet grow. She could just adjust the shoe so that it could continue to fit. And so I came back home knowing I wasn't going to be a missionary, but I still had this like kind of missional kind of calling, I guess. And I wondered what I could do. I thought, what could my mission be from home? And how could I help, like, especially with global poverty? How could I help from home? And at that point, like, home was Nampa, Idaho. So what could I do from Nampa? And that's where I went back to this idea for a growing shoe. And I felt like it would make a difference, and I felt like it was something I could work on from home. And so I jumped into it, grabbed a few friends. We jumped into it. Didn't know what I was doing. Um, and it took 6 years. It wasn't like my full time thing. I had a different job and just kind of did this on the side. We started a nonprofit called Because International. And then our first project really was just trying to figure out this growing shoe. And it took about 6 years for us to figure it out. Lots of trial and error, lots of mistakes and failures, but we finally did it. We had a shoe that could grow 5 sizes and last for years, and we were like super excited. It was still just kind of a hobby, but then right after that, it accidentally went viral. It took off online, and kind of overnight, everything sort of changed. So at that point, I actually was a pastor of a church plant, which kind of had its own entrepreneurial journey to it as well. So I was pastoring a church plant in Nampa called the Table Church. But then when the shoe that grows took off, kind of made a plan to resign from the church, and then went full time with the shoe that grows. Just one other friend and I, we were the first two kind of employees, and we just had a blast. These probably about last 8 years that I spent working with Because International and the shoe that grows full time, and just super excited where it is today. And so that work is continuing, but I've kind of closed that chapter, and I don't work full time with them anymore. And now I'm doing a few other things. And but yeah, it was such a fun journey. I didn't know what I was doing. It was just like one step at a time, really, and trying to say yes to what God was putting in front of me, even though I didn't really know like the full story. But it was super fun looking back to be a part of that journey for sure.
That's really cool. And it's full circle for me because I remember someone coming to my church and like, hey, we need to raise money for the shoe that grows kind of thing. And
Oh,
so I remember
really? And
raising money and
when you were back east,
yeah,
when
when I
you
was
were
back east.
in,
So it's come full
oh
circle for
man,
me now. So that's kind of funny.
that's
But
awesome. That's
channeling
awesome.
that spirit, that how did that lead into Lead Young? Brent and Scott shared a little bit how they didn't
Yeah,
necessarily pick you and they had different people in mind, but you went to a meeting and you just kind of ran with it. So my questions are, how does
yeah.
that this shoe that grows get carried into Lead Young, and what made you want to get attached to Lead Young in the first place?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I kind of wormed my way in there with Lead Young, but basically, my wife and I I'm married to an incredible woman, and we've got two awesome kids. Basically, she wanted to work full time. She'd been doing the mom thing for several years, and just doing such a great job, but she really wanted to work again. So we kind of made a plan where I would step away from my full time job, which was with the shoe that grows, and that she would kind of step into that full time role. And then my kids are in school, but my the plan was I was going to hang with the kids a little bit more. But since they are in school, I knew I had a little time at least to do something else, maybe not full time, but um, so we kind of gave ourselves a long runway, which was really nice. It wasn't anything we just had to figure out in a month, but it was kind of during COVID, so we kind of had a couple years where we kind of committed to this plan to kind of switch, and she would work full time, and I would hang with the kids and kind of do something part time. And then it was and truly, like, I'm not the type where I hear God speak to me all the time. I really don't, but it was kind of praying and trying to listen and figure out what does God maybe have for me. I actually thought a couple doors were opening, or doors I wanted to open, and those did not work out. It seemed like those closed, or just failed. And so as I really was trying to listen, I had a good friend tell me to really pray for clarity. Pray that God would really clarify where He wants me to be, what He wants me to do. And so as I kept kind of moving forward, one thing that kept popping up was I really wanted to get back into doing more things with the church, Church of the
Mhm.
Nazarene, which I love. And so I was looking for some ways to do that. And then these conversations with Scott and Brent as a part of a committee that I was on, I was just really inspired by these conversations of um, how can we raise up more leaders, especially young adult leaders here on our Intermountain district. And so then with kind of just talking with them more and more, and feeling it out and praying a little bit more and more, I just really felt like this was an open door. And so I did kind of pitch them on it a little bit. I love starting new things. I love building things from scratch. It's it's not easy, and I'm sure others could do it better than me, but I it's just something I enjoy, and I don't mind trying to take some risks and take some chances and trying and failing. I've learned how to do that, I guess, through some of my other entrepreneurial journeys. And so it just kind of came together for this opportunity to try to help spiritually ignite young adults and raise up young adult leaders, both vocational ministry and just kind of those general church leaders that make such a big difference in our churches. And so I just latched onto that. I loved it. And then it's really hard for me to kind of stop chewing on it and thinking about it. And like once I kind of have that goal in front of me, how can we build this? Here's what kind of the finish line looks like. It's like, okay, how can we reverse engineer this? Where do we start? What do we need? What does it look like? I love that kind of stuff. So it's been a really fun. It's been just a little more than a year that we've been at this, and it's just been a real pleasure and an honor to be a part of the kind of this foundational team for Lead Young.
Yeah, Scott and Brent talked about that a little bit. How after two days after the meeting, you already had a business plan for them. You had everything in front of them. And so, did you just go home and just work on that nonstop for 2 days, or did that come pretty easy?
Honestly, it was stuff I'd been thinking about already. I I don't know. Like, I really don't know what I'm doing right, but there's certain things that I think are important when you're trying to build something. And so I'd already been thinking a little bit about, where does the money come from? What is the leadership, kind of what is the structure going to look like? Is this going to be a good fit for me? Is this going to be a good fit for the district? Some of that stuff. And even, some of that comes from, while I am really proud of what we've been able to build with the shoe that grows and because international, like truth be told, like the church plant that I did for 3 years, the table church, even though it was a really there was a lot of good things that came from it, and that's how I view it 100%. But it also, after 3 years when I left, we struggled to find a new pastor, and we didn't really have a lot of things in place that I should have put into place for it to succeed kind of without me. And so we ended up closing, kind of making the decision just to close it instead of keep going. And so sometimes, like, yeah, sometimes things work and sometimes they don't. Sometimes there's a little bit of luck involved. Sometimes, you can have everything's great and it just doesn't quite work out. But I think there are some best practices when you try to build something and start something. So for Lead Young, I was probably already thinking about some of those things. And that's where was able to just put pen to paper and just draw it out a little bit. And then that's what I was able to show to Scott and Brent. And it's still, I mean, it's still changing. It's still morphing, right? Like that's one of the biggest things for any level of entrepreneur, whether you're just doing something for the first time or whether you're a serial entrepreneur and you've created 20 businesses. And I mean, it's never perfect on day one. And so how can you have that attitude where, like, yeah, this is where we're starting and we're going to keep tweaking it. We're going to get good advice. We're going to listen. We're going to be open to, changing directions and just trying to keep chasing after that mission. It's important to have a good strong mission, and vision, but and everything that happens between here and here, who knows how you're going to get there, really. So yeah, so that was really fun to show them kind of that first plan. We've pretty much stayed to the bones of it, but so many things from that we talked about that day are different than they are today, and I'm sure they'll be different than they will be a year from now.
Can you share a few of those things? What are some things that has kept from bare bones that I've experienced in year one, and what are some things that you guys maybe put off until further years, or just said we're going to do something different entirely?
Yeah, good question, Josh. Yeah, you know a lot of this because you're in the cohort for year one, so you're seeing this. But some of the things we first started talking about, we knew we wanted it to be an opportunity for both young adults who wanted to pursue their kind of call to ministry, to be vocational ministers in that church setting, the lead pastor, children's pastor, youth pastor kind of thing. But we also wanted to provide space for those that did not feel a calling to that kind of vocational ministry, but felt called to use their professional skills as board members and Sunday school teachers and leaders, in even in ways that, like, we don't even know right now. Like, we just were really open to creating a program that fit for kind of any young adult that wanted to discover and clarify and then pursue their calling, kind of like no matter where that went. That's something we've stayed really true to, and I'm really glad that we have. We knew that we wanted to do it in kind of a cohort style. We wanted to get some commitment from a group of young adults that could join us for an extended period of time. We didn't want it to just be a retreat or a weekend or something like that. So and then we really wanted some educational components, like some training. We wanted some mentoring. We wanted beyond mentoring, we really wanted some coaching, some really intentional coaching. And then we wanted to get together, even though it was a district wide thing. And from being on one of the outskirts kind of our district, like this is a large geographical district, different maybe than back east, different than some of the other districts in USA, Canada. And so we really wanted to make sure that even though it's spread out and we want to provide good flexible opportunities for the cohort to be able to engage online or with people in their own area, but like we do want to get together in person at least a few times. And so yeah, we essentially, those four things, kind of the education, the coaching, the mentoring, and the gatherings, those were kind of our four pillars of Lead Young as we got started. Those continue to be the four as we are finishing up this first year cohort. As we look at our cohort number two coming up, it'll still revolve around those four things, although we'll definitely tweak a lot of it. One of the things that we thought at the beginning was going to be a really big part of this, and it didn't really turn into a huge part, although we're still kind of figuring it out. But we thought we were going to ask young adults to commit to being in this program for 4 years. Like instead of just like the 1 year cohort, come join August through April. We really thought we were going to ask young adults to commit for 4 years. And each year would look a little different, but like they would be in this program for 4 years. And at the end of those 4 years, we would have about 25 each year was our goal. So like at the end of the 4 years, like we would have like a group of 100 young adults. Some are in their fourth year and third year and second year and first year. But like moving forward, it's like we'd always have like 100 young adults at various stages, like in our Lead Young like leadership program. And it hasn't quite turned out quite like that. That was actually a pretty big part of our hope as at the beginning. And just the realities of life, we do want to have like a high bar. Like this is a big commitment because we think it could be really really valuable, really transformational. It's hard to ask anybody to do something for 4 years. It's especially hard to ask a young adult to do something for 4 years, commit to something for 4 years. It's hard enough. It's a big enough ask just for like 9 months, like just kind of for that first year. And so we're excited to provide some opportunities to engage even after they're kind of, after you guys are done with this cohort. We do hope there's some ways to continue to engage like formally and informally, but that part definitely looks different than what we were thinking. So, and that's okay. Like, yeah, it's all good. Like we're gonna roll with it. We weren't married to that idea. It didn't all depend on that, and so yeah. But that definitely, that's one thing that's changed.
What are some things that in year two are going to change? So people listening to this might be thinking about joining the second year cohort. What are some things that they look forward to? And just to clarify, on my end, from the first year, I have a mentor, I have a coach, I take classes, so 4 classes of 4 weeks each, and then we have some gatherings. We had 2 gatherings and then a summit. And so,
Yeah,
what are
yeah.
some
So
things that the second cohort can say, okay, I understand what happened in the first cohort. What am I signing up for in the second cohort? What are the changes that are happening?
yeah, great question, great question. And we'll get a chance if anyone out there listening can make it to this year's summit, April 18th in Nampa. April 18th, 2024 is in Nampa, and then the next day we're doing one in Pocatello on
And
April
what churches
19th.
are those at?
Yeah, good question. So that's going to be at Vida Nueva Church in Nampa from 7 to 8:30 is the summit, and a wonderful time of worship, connection. But then also you'll get to hear a lot more about Lead Young and about our program. And that'll be the day that applications will open to be a part of that year two cohort. And then the next day is at Rocky Mountain Ministries, which is the Church of the Nazarene in Pocatello. And same thing, 7 to 8:30, awesome worship, some connection, and then sharing more about Lead Young
And if
and encouraging
someone
people to sign up.
is listening to this after those dates, can they still apply?
Yes. Yep. You can apply. We'll probably have applications open. So the rest of April and probably even most of May. And then even this year, it's one of the, again, you just kind of roll with it, right? We had someone join in September. We had someone join in October, I think. We still had spots and felt like it was a good fit. So we're really open. We want to be here for young adults, and we know that not everything works according to plan. And so yeah, but to your question, so for the second year, one of the big changes we'll make, we really want to get together in person more often. And even with something we didn't do in this first year, we want to have a really big welcome event where right as we get started, all of our coaches, hopefully a lot of our mentors, and then all of our participants, we can all get together in August and just have a ton of energy and excitement coming out of like this sort of welcome introduction sort of an event. And super excited already for that. That was something I wish we would have done in this year one, because I know a lot of you in the cohort. Well, there's probably still a couple you haven't even met, but
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
haven't
you,
met certain people. I've met
yeah,
some
and
of them, but that's because I'm a youth pastor on the district rather than because of my cohort.
sure, yeah. And but like for us this first year, like we didn't have that welcome event. We had an event in September, but it was over in like Twin Falls, Kimberly. And so I know we had about 15 that were able to make it to that, but not everybody. And so for some, it's like even that whole first kind of half of the year of our cohort, they didn't maybe they met online or something, but like they didn't really meet and get to know each other. And we think that's a really important part of the Lead Young experience, is getting to know the other young adults in your cohort, and getting to know, like, you'll get to know your coach obviously, but like getting to know the other coaches, getting to know Scott Shaw, the district superintendent, Brent Deacons, the assistant district superintendent. Just those relationships are really important. And so something I'm going to do as we head into year two is have more opportunities to get together. And then I'm going to have a little bit less what's the right word, I'm going to be less worried maybe that not everybody comes to all of those gatherings. I think my philosophy with this first year was, let's do like two gatherings and a summit, and I demand that everybody goes to those. Like I tried to have a high expectation
Hmm.
for people to attend those, and sometimes things just come up and it's tough. So instead of having just a couple opportunities to get together, and then if you miss it, like it's a real bummer, I think next year we're going to have several opportunities to get together. And if you can't come to all of them, like that's okay. But hopefully you can come to most of them, and hopefully you could come to all of them, but let's have more chances to get together. I know that'll be one of the big changes. The other thing that'll change a little bit, we really found that the coach, and I hope this is true for your experience, Josh. We really found that the coach was a really valuable part of the Lead Young of this leadership cohort. And we're going to lean into that even more. We're excited for the coaches to not only kind of lead you through a curriculum, which we were just starting, we kind of just created it. So we're excited to make that curriculum better and better. We're excited for that coach to really be kind of more of a discipler in some ways as well, and just kind of play a larger role. And so as you meet with that coach once a month, or even for some people, maybe more, we just want that person to really be a huge part of your year, like a huge influence in your life. And we're excited for that opportunity. So, like one thing we're doing behind the scenes is we're putting some money into training our coaches. They kind of went in without any wonderful people who are awesome, but we didn't train them at all this first year. We're going to go through some coaching training for them. We're actually going to pay them a little bit too, because we did see what a big time commitment it was to be a good coach. um, and so we're just gonna lean into them. And again, I think having a really strong coach can really help make the Lead Young experience really powerful. And so, yeah, we're excited to make some tweaks, make some changes, make some things happen. And if anyone is interested in being a part of it, which several people have already talked to me, and once we open those applications, we're super excited to see who God is gonna kind of lead to put a little restlessness into people, put a little something on their hearts, so that they can explore this. And for anyone listening out there, even if you're just interested a teeny tiny bit in what this would look like for you to be a part of our Lead Young leadership cohort, please apply or get a hold of me. Like I would love to walk you through it and see if it would be a good fit for you.
And what about those who you're talking about, this coaching, this mentoring? What about those who are old enough to be outside this Lead Young program but want to be part of that coach, want to be that mentor for that younger generation?
Yeah, that's such a good question, Josh. So our program is for young adults, and we consider young adults 18 to 35. So if you're outside of that 35 area, if you could be as 36, or you could be 86. But we would love your help, and there are definitely some ways to help with our program. One of the biggest ones is being a mentor. It's been really fun. We had more mentors interested than we had kind of spots available. So it was really nice to have a list of people that I knew were available to serve as a mentor, to meet with a young adult once a month, for that cohort, and to be able to kind of connect people with mentors that I thought would be a good fit for them. It was awesome to have a big list of mentors that were willing to do that. As always with any church setting, of course, like we need those prayers. We're going to have some more fundraising opportunities this next year. We'll do a big event, and it'll be fun to get some people involved with that. But the other thing I'm excited about, maybe I'll throw it out here, and even see what you think about this, Josh. Um, one of the things. So one of the things I'll say this. I'll talk for a minute, and then I would love to hear what you have to say. One of the things that we hope to do with Lead Young is not just exist for the cohort. In fact, anytime we get together, anytime we've had a gathering for our cohort this year, we have also planned and provided a larger event for any young adults, even if they're not in the cohort, for any young adults to come be a part of. And it's been really fun to offer that. That is important to me. It's important to Brent and Scott as well. But that's important to me, that we don't just exist for the 25 young adults in our group, but that we are offering additional opportunities as well. And so part of that is a little more logistical, as we look at recruiting for our next year. It's great to have some interested young adults. It's great to have young adults that are participating and engaged with not only Lead Young events, but even other young adult events happening on the district. And so that's just good practice to do that. But the other thing that I really want to do, and it seems like young adult ministry, especially in the Church of the Nazarene, especially on USA Canada, that's kind of my context. It seems like young adult ministry has struggled with sustainability, right? Like it's just different. It's a different age group. It's a different phase of life. There's a lot of complexity to it. It's different than kids ministry. It's different than youth ministry that has these really established kind of patterns of operation. And so for young adult ministry, one of the things I'm excited about, both with Lead Young and kind of just in general, how can we add some sustainability? And so one thing I'd like to do, I'm not sure if we'll even be able to I'm sure we won't be able to fully do it in year number 2, but hopefully year 3 and year 4, and as we continue on, someday I would love to have a Lead Young representative, someone who's not a young adult. They could be a young adult, but very open for this to not be a young adult. A Lead Young representative at every church on our district. I would love that. I'd love to have someone. So maybe they're not a mentor in the program. Or maybe they are, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're not a young adult. Maybe it's just maybe it's my mom, right? Like my mom says, for the she used to go to Nampa First Church before she moved. My mom would say, "Yeah, I'm 67 years old, and I want to be the Lead Young representative for Nampa First Church. And so for me, I'm giving that rep, um, hey, here's all the info and here's some posters about the summit that's coming up. Can you help spread the word to the young adults in your church? Or, hey, we've got this fundraiser coming up. Can you sponsor a table at the fundraiser and get, 7 other people to join you and be a part of it? Or, hey, we're really praying about this. Or, hey, we need more mentors. Can you help put out a call to mentors? But to have a lead young rep from each church would be incredible. And so maybe I'll just plant that seed here. That's just an idea I had. And I think that would be an awesome way to get people who are not young adults, but are passionate about helping this next generation, helping the future leaders of the Nazarene Church. These little things like promoting events and making announcements and inviting people to things. I mean, that stuff makes a big difference. So I don't know if I've ever mentioned that to you though, Josh. Like what would you think if Lead Young tried to have a Lead Young rep at
I
every
think
church?
I think it's a great idea. My only pushback or guess concern would be you have to make sure whoever that rep is you have to be very intentional about picking that rep. Especially if you want that rep to be talking to young adults, talking to older people about sponsorships and all that stuff. You have to be very intentional about it. Because if you just pick some Joe Schmo that the young adults don't connect with for whatever reason in that particular church, then they're going to dismiss anything that they say, whether it be join this young lead young thing or do this, do that. They're going to be like, well, whatever, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
no,
So
that's a great point. And well, let me put you on the spot. So for your church, for Baker City Naz in Baker City, Oregon, can you name one person that you think would be a home run? Like, oh, this would be a great lead young rep for Baker City. Someone
yeah,
that young adults do listen to.
I think I could name a few people, and those are
Oh,
people
awesome,
who are already in young adult ministries, people who are leading our young adult on Tuesday nights, help planning events for
awesome,
things like
awesome.
that. And so I think you just have to make sure, and I think it'll be harder in churches that don't have any young adult ministry type things.
Yeah, totally. You're totally right. But hopefully I could, and with people's help, right? Like I definitely don't do this alone, but you know, to literally to make something like this happen, to ask, Brent, to ask Scott, to ask our leadership team, Lead Young, we have about a 5-person leadership team that helps me with a lot of the direction and decisions, and then leaning on our cohort in year one to be able to go to you and say, hey, who, you're at Baker, who do you recommend at Baker? I'm not sure how much progress we'll make on this year, but I'd love to get to that point so that if someday I'm not in this role, whoever steps in is going to step in with a leadership team of like 5 or 6. They're going to step in with Scott and Brent and the empowerment that they give. They're going to step in with hopefully a pretty solid budget, and that they can use that budget really well to make this stuff happen. And for them to have young adult reps at or lead young reps at each church, I mean, to some degree, I don't really care if people know that I'm the director of Lead Young, right? You know what I mean? Like that's not important as long as they know, oh, there's a summit coming up, or hey, there's this event, or I can apply for this next year, and here's the website. Like that's great. Like go for it. So again, some of that sustainability, I'm really excited to work on the sustainability of this. I think I've probably seen this, you've probably seen this in your ministry so far, Josh, where things can be really good if there's a really strong leader, but then if that person leaves, or if something changes in their life and they just don't have the time to commit anymore, or whatever it might be, when there's not a good system in place to have that sustainability, things can often just slip through the cracks, and too many times that has happened, I think, to young adults specifically. And so I'm really excited. How can we build something great? How can we, it's not going to happen overnight, but how can we step by step build something that we're really proud of, so that we are, and here's the last thing I'll say with this. One of my big hopes with Lead Young is that we can, I'll use some churchy words, and then I'll say what it really means to me. We want to be able to engage and equip and empower young adults. That's something we've put out there. For me, what that means is I hope that Lead Young can help take a young adult as far as they want to go with connection, with leadership, with their calling, with being a part of the church. If there's any young adults out there that feel like they want to do more, but they just don't know how, or they're being blocked from that somehow, like just they're not able to do more for some reason, like I want Lead Young to be the partner for them, to say I'm going to help. I'm not going to do it for you, like this is you, but I'm going to come alongside you and help take you as far as you want to go. If you just want to come to one event, like that's all you're looking for, awesome, come to the events. If you want to go to young adult retreats, or connect with the district on this or that, fantastic, we're going to help make that happen. But if you want to be a leader in the Church of the Nazarene and start a church, or start a compassionate ministry program, or start this or that, and you want to figure out how to do that, hey, come be a part of our cohort. You will learn so much in this year. You will be surrounded by resources and support, and we're going to help take you as far as you want to go. So I'm just excited. I think partly it comes from when I was a young adult, we didn't quite have that. And
Hmm.
I found my way, like I was fine, but we didn't quite have anybody saying that, especially to young adults. And this is like coming, I'm getting on my soapbox now, but this is like coming out of I had such an amazing time in my youth group. And like I literally went to NYC my senior year, right? Like this big beautiful time at NYC. I flow right into NNU, which did an amazing job, and I loved my time there. And then after, again, like great youth group experience, great time at a Nazarene university. After that, it was like nothing. And I was really surprised, and I was really, I really struggled with that, to be honest. And so it was like so shocking to me that young, like, because I'd always gone from like, oh, here's church camp, yeah, go to this camp this summer. Here's this, here's that, here's this. Like everything was always kind of given to me, which there's probably some good and bad there, but everything was kind of given to me. And then as I hit this young adult stage where I'm not in college anymore, I'm not in youth group anymore. At that point, I was not married, didn't have any kids. I was in this really weird, like no man's land of church, and I really struggled with that. And so again, hopefully Lead Young can be a part of a solution there. It's not the full solution by any means, but hopefully we can bring some connection and some just some really good vibes. I don't know, some good things for young adults on our district.
Now, speaking on that, what do you have to say to this current cohort that is about to graduate and get their certificate of leadership? Where do they go from here? Do they just have to find something on their local church on their own? Is there something Lead Young is planning for them, or what does this cohort one look like in the next year or so? What's their journey as far as Lead Young is concerned?
Yeah, that's man, you're asking lots of good questions today, Josh. This is great. So I hope the first thing I say to them, which I hope you've heard me say already a few times, if not a lot of times, thank you guys for being in our first year. Thanks for being kind of the guinea pigs with this program. It definitely has not been perfect, and everyone's done a really good job flowing with it and being flexible. And I just have appreciated this first cohort's gonna probably always be my favorite, just because it's all that I've put you guys through this year. But my hope for this cohort is, and without twisting God's arm, we definitely, it's up to him in many ways. I don't want to twist his arm, but I hope that by the summit, by mid-April, April 18th and April 19th, I hope that our young adults in this cohort can have some clarity on what their calling is. And that could be anything from I am feeling led to be a children's pastor. Like I am committing to that. That is the clarity I've received throughout this program. Or that could be I've got some clarity that God wants me to wait. Like that. Like it does not need to look like anything for that to be success to me. But I'd love for our young adults to feel some clarity of here's where I am, here's where God is calling me, And then I'd love for them to know, and hopefully with their coach, especially helping them through this, I'd love for them to understand their calling, feel some clarity on their calling, and know what they can do with that calling, nuts and bolts, know what they can do with that within the Church of the Nazarene. So, for example, if they feel calling towards missions, excellent. I don't want to just stop there. Okay, what are some next steps that you can do with that calling for missions in the Church of the Nazarene as you move forward? And again, like I'm not going to do it for them, but for them to know these are the next steps. Here's how I can pursue this calling in the Church of the Nazarene. I know for you, Josh, you're a youth pastor right now. I'm not your coach, but I'm assuming that youth ministry is part of your calling, if not a big part of your calling. But in April, for you to feel some good clarity around, like, boy, I am right where I need to be, Baker City youth pastor. Like this is it. Like I am right in the sweet spot. Or maybe throughout this process, you've felt some clarity towards an additional calling within ministry, and like, okay, great, it doesn't mean you're going to do that tomorrow, but like, what is that path? What are the nuts and bolts? Like, how can you pursue that calling within the Church of the Nazarene? So again, boy, again, I don't want to twist arms, and I know everybody's different. We've got 22 in our cohort, ranging from age 20 up to age 34, and everyone is different, truly. But by the time this cohort finishes in April, I'd love for everyone to feel some clarity about their calling and to know some next steps for where they can go. Now, what I hope we can do with Lead Young, I don't think we've committed to this yet, but what I hope we can do is continue to come alongside you all with, hopefully, at the very least, um, coaching and mentoring to some degree. And if people don't want that, like, no worries, we're not going to force you into anything. But if some of the cohort would say, I would still love to keep meeting with my mentor, or is there a new mentor in this field that you could connect me with? 100%, I'd be happy to do that. And then the other thing I'm excited about, not only do we want the cohort to come to some of our general events. I mean, any young adult can come to our general events. I'm excited to bring our first year cohort to some of our gatherings that we have specifically for our year number 2 cohort, but to invite that first year cohort to come to that if you can, if you want to, come and be around this new cohort, connect with them, help them. I'm so excited for the maybe the day when some of our cohorts are helping be those mentors for the newest cohort. They're helping be, maybe one or two of them are going to be coaches in the next couple years, because that just resonated with them so much. And truly, someday I think I will hand off this baton as the director of Lead Young to someone else. I'm assuming it will be someone, a young adult, that has gone through the cohort and that has joined our leadership team and that just really loves what we're trying to do. So not a perfect answer. We're still kind of figuring it out, but really excited for all the young adults in this cohort to just feel like they're ready to go after we're done. Once it hits the summit, feel like they've accomplished something, because they have, and feel like they've got some great next steps, even if those next steps are, I need to stay right where I am and keep doing right, exactly what I'm doing, because I feel some clarity that this is the right spot. Even that is clarity. And so, yeah, I'm just excited, super excited.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, coming up, you're about to give a pitch or talk about Lead Young to people and pastors and leaders from all around USA, Canada. And so, I just want to give you an opportunity for those who can attend that or haven't attended that, whatever. Can you give us a little sneak peek of what that's kind of going to look like? And what would you say to district leaders from not on in a mountain in anywhere? What would you say to them about maybe starting something like Lead Young, or trying to just, if they're just trying to invest in their young adults on their district, what would you say to them?
Yeah, again, great question, Josh. You're hitting home runs today, man. I love it. I'm so excited to share this. Yeah, for anyone that can make it, if you're going to attend that NYI, I think it's called the NYI District Leaders Conference, something like that. It's going to be at NNU. We're super excited to be able to do 2 workshops and present this. And basically, what I'm going to share about is the program. Here's Lead Young. Here's what we're doing on our district. Here's the Lead Young program. Here's kind of its story. Here's how it got started. Here's the 4 big pillars. Here's how we set it up. But I think what I want to show people is, and like again, like we're still in the middle of figuring this out, right? This could hopefully it doesn't, but this could all bomb and this could be gone in 12 months, right? Like I don't think it will, but we're just getting started. This is not a tried and true, proven model by any means. But what we're trying to get to in some ways is a blueprint so that other districts, especially USA Canada, which is just kind of the context that I'm in, a blueprint for other districts to be able to engage with their young adults. And hopefully, kind of what our mission, kind of our twofold mission, we want to spiritually ignite young adults for growth and service. And we really want to raise up young adult leaders. And so, for other districts that would say, yeah, we are not doing a great job at that, I'd love to be able to show them our Lead Young program and show them, again, right now it's kind of a fuzzy blueprint, but show them a blueprint that, hey, with this amount of money from the district, with this amount of money that you could fundraise, with this amount of kind of a leadership structure, leadership team, 2 part-time staff members, and then, hey, like here's the pillars that we use, obviously contextualize it for where you're at and make it work for where you're at. But with these things, we're trying to build a really solid system to engage and equip and empower young adults. And it's not working perfectly, but it's gaining some traction potentially. It'll be fun this year to share with this group, and I'm happy to share it with others too, because we're right in the middle of it. We're right in the towards the end of our first year, but like we're still just kind of in the middle of the beginnings of this. I'm really looking forward to, after year 2, after year 3, after year 4, where we actually have both some data and some more established, like, hey, we've done this, we've tweaked it, and here, we're still tweaking it, but like here's kind of where we've landed. Here's a really good sweet spot for Lead Young for the Intermountain District. And again, that blueprint, how can we share a blueprint for other districts, especially if other districts or churches, sometimes it's just hard to know where to start, right? Like I have no doubt that what we are doing on the Intermountain District with some dollars, some leaders, some district support, which is huge for the district superintendent and the assistant district superintendent to be so supportive of this. Like that's just huge. But like with district support, with some leadership and with some dollars, like we're not doing anything that any other district can't do. Like in some ways it's not rocket science. But if we can help it by showing what we're doing, hey, here's how we got started, here's how you could start, here's kind of what we did, and here's what's working, here's what's not. We actually, a really cool thing, a different district actually gave us some dollars, gave us a grant because they wanted to see how this goes for Intermountain District, because they'd love to learn from that, learn from our experience,
It's
instead
funny.
of all of us
Ask you
just kind
about
of
that.
struggling through this, like let's learn from someone and take the good parts and leave the bad parts. And so, yeah, super excited. If there's anyone listening that is a part of a Nazarene district in USA Canada and would like to talk more about this, or if they want a glimpse of that fuzzy blueprint, let me know. Reach out to me, and I'd be so happy to have that conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, on that district giving us money, we talked with Scott and Brian about how that doesn't really happen. It's kind of a unique situation on how they got the money, why they gave us money. And so, what are Brent kind of touched upon it a little bit, but what are they looking from you guys? Like, are you guys going to go down to Southern California and present it or help start it? What does it look like to kind of pay back that money per se?
Yeah, so the district superintendent down there has just been incredible to work with, so generous and so, um, again, kind of like visionary. Yeah, like this isn't something that, from my understanding, I'm kind of new to all this, but this isn't something that districts typically do. And so to have the vision to be able to do this, so Like any district superintendent, any district team, everyone's busy. So we haven't been able to make it down there yet. We would definitely be open to that, to go down in person and meet with them, and maybe help train and teach, and connect with a few of their leaders so that they could do this. We're hopefully putting together some really good digital resources. So whether it's that district specifically or other districts, they can again kind of look at that fuzzy blueprint a little bit. But yeah, Brent, our assistant superintendent, Brent and I are available for that district specifically to do anything that they would need to help them succeed with this. And but again, I think I'll just project a little bit. I know that even if you look at the Intermountain District, we have an incredibly supportive district superintendent. We have an incredibly supportive assistant district superintendent. And not that I am doing anything special, but I'm not sure that they by themselves could have made Lead Young happen the way it's happened. And so they needed someone like me that had part-time availability to come in and kind of do the work, right? And so for any district, and for this district especially, as they look at what we're doing, I think they might be in a position maybe to move a little faster. And I'm again totally hypothetical, just projecting, but because I know they have a district superintendent who's super supportive, but do they have that person who can work the program? I'm not sure yet. Maybe they're praying for that person. Maybe they're looking for that person, because again, I think that's a really big part of it, and vice versa. If I'm really excited to do this and I'm excited to work this program, but I don't have the support of my district, of the district advisory board, of the district superintendent, and then for us, we have an assistant district superintendent. If they're not supporting this, it's not going to work, right? Like there has to be kind of both levels. And so for any district that feels like maybe they've got a person who would love to commit to running the program, and they've got some district leadership that is excited to support young adults, hey, that's the formula. That's like those are the building blocks, I think, of this. And again, we want this to be sustainable. Like we want this to happen. You can't do it without your district leadership supporting this, and you can't do it, and the district leadership can't do it by themselves. They need people to run the program. So I'm getting more excited the more I talk about this. This is great, man. Any entrepreneurial things I do, if I feel like I'm not excited about it, like I'm not thinking about it, I'm not jazzed about it, I usually try to drop it, because it's like, man, if I'm not excited about this, like no one else is going to be, right? So after an hour conversation here, I'm probably more excited, and that's probably a good sign. So
And I got one more question for you.
yeah, yeah,
We talked about with Scott and Brent about 100 leaders in 10 years. They said it initially started with what can we do in the next 10 years, and so I want to ask you, just like I asked them, what do you see Lead Young in 10 years? Well, 9 years. You're already down 1 year. You've completed your
yeah.
first year. And if we could fast forward 9 years, what does Lead Young look like? What do the people in leadership look like? The people who've gone through it, what does that kind of look like in your eyes?
Yeah, it's such a good question. In a really simple way, I almost hope that Lead Young looks a little bit like NYI for like youth groups, right? Like they've got these traditional events, they've got these great events that people are excited about and that people show up for and are meaningful. They've got great leadership structure. It like I hope it can turn into be another program, another structure like Nazarene Missions, like Nazarene Discipleship International, like NYI. But truly, in 10 years, I would hope that there are some killer events every year on our district for young adults that they show up for and that are compelling and meaningful. I hope that there's still a cohort of some kind each year that is bringing in fresh, awesome, excited, curious, restless young adults who want to discover and clarify and pursue their calling. And then probably the piece that I'm most excited about, um, and we're not there yet because we're just getting started, but what to build towards. I hope that there are 9 years worth of young adults 20, 22, 25, however many we have each year in the cohort. I hope there's 9 years worth of young adults. Let's call it 200 young adults that not all of them are going to live in the same place. I mean, it's such an interesting age and stage of life. But of those 200, I hope that our district could send a message, send an email to those 200 and say something like, hey, we've been really praying about uh, Salt Lake City. Hey, we've been really praying about Twin Falls. We've been really praying about Eagle, Idaho. And we feel like God wants to do something. God is doing something there, and we want to lean into that. Who feels something? Who would be willing to pray about that? We want to throw this opportunity out to you 200 young adult leaders and see if God is stirring anything in you. I would love to do that. I'd love for them to send an email out to those 200 leaders and say, hey, we have our indoor camp meeting coming up, and we would love a little refreshing of our indoor camp meeting. Um, who wants to be a part of this? Who wants to help us? And I mean, I just see this, like, this is a bad word for it, but like this army of potential, this army of and we're not doing the calling and we're not doing the responding. Like, God's doing the calling, the young adults are listening and responding. If anything, Lead Young is just this little channel of communication, really, of organization. That's all that we're trying to do. And so I would be thrilled if there's still those like yearly things happening. But again, if Lead Young can be a part of raising up 100, 200, whatever, 20, like, I don't even care how many it is. Because again, I want, like, I'm not doing it for you, right? Like, I'm not God, God's doing the calling, and young adults have to do the response. But hopefully Lead Young, and what I am excited about doing personally is putting young adults in a spot where they can succeed, where they can discover and clarify and pursue their calling, and to do that in such a way that 10 years from now, again, any young adult, we're going to help take them as far as they want to go, and we're going to make that as easy as possible and as compelling as possible and as inspiring as possible. And man, I just can't wait. Yeah, now, is all that going to happen? I'm going to be hopeful and say yes, right? Like, yes. I if I didn't think that was possible, I wouldn't be doing this. Is it going to happen? I guess we'll find out. But like, is that possible? 100%. And can other districts do that too? 100%. Um, and man, that gives me hope. That gives me a ton of hope. So I'm excited, man. This was great, Josh. Thanks for the
Yeah,
conversation.
no problem. I'm
Yeah,
so happy that you
truly.
came on. I hope that gives clarity and maybe ask more questions or inspires people as they listen to this about, and then they reach out. We'll have Kenton's email below, and that way you can reach out via Lead Young. You can send the podcast stuff. We'll forward all that to Kenton, but just get a hold of him. We'll have some questions on the Spotify, so you can ask questions, and we'll respond to that. But I hope a lot of people listen to this, get inspired just as you were, like you were talking about. If you're not excited, why should anyone else be? But clearly you're excited. People, happy about it. And so hopefully that gets everyone else. Thank you for listening. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. But thank you for listening.